Thank you all for joining us for this webinar titled Future Visionaries, India-EU Cooperation for Digital Transitions, part of the ongoing Portugal-India series at ORF in partnership with the Portuguese Embassy. My name is Trisha Ray, and I am an Associate Fellow at ORF, working on emerging technologies, security, and geopolitics. Digital technologies are the lifeblood of governments, industries, communities, and our day-to-day lives, even more so in the past year. And as the webinar descriptor aptly notes, in the post-COVID-19 world, digital transitions will also be critical for economic recovery. Both India and the EU have outlined ambitious vision documents for a digital India and a digital EU. The two also share a desire to break out of the US-China duopoly in most things digital and tech, with the core tenets of Indian solutions to Indian problems and the European way. Both emphasize sovereignty, autonomy, and supporting local innovation. And India-EU research cooperation on biotech, on clean energy, and health tech under programs like the Horizon 2020 have been cornerstones of their relationship. The two have also discussed over the course of 6 cyber dialogues how to cooperate at existing technology norms forums. The complex nature of digital transitions necessitates creative, national, multilateral, and multi-stakeholder solutions to questions such as privacy, data governance, trusted supply chains, connectivity and resilience, and capacity building, all while ensuring that the processes and outcomes are secure, ethical, and inclusive. I'm joined today by 2 distinguished panelists, João Farinha, who's the advisor to the Secretary of State for Digital Transitions at the Portuguese government, and Dr. Gulshan Rai, Distinguished Fellow at ORF and former National Cybersecurity Coordinator at the Prime Minister's Office in the Government of India. A quick note for the audience, we will begin with 10-minute opening interventions by both our panelists, following which we will open up to questions. Please put your questions in the Q&A box on your screen. With that, I'll pass the virtual mic to Dr. Rai. So over to you.
Thank you, Trisha. Good morning to my esteemed panelist, João Farinha, and to the participants, and good afternoon to my Indian participants and colleagues. It's really a pleasure, and I would like to thank ORF and my co-host in the Portuguese for facilitating this dialogue, or facilitating this interaction on a very important subject and a very important time. Friends, the digital transformation, what we are witnessing today, is much different than what we have seen in the earlier part of our life, or maybe in the earlier century. This is, in someone says, this is the 4th wave of digital transformation. The digital transformation is different and marked by the emergence of new technologies, so-called the artificial intelligence, clouds, Internet of Things, and data analytics, big data, cybersecurity, and all kind of issues there. Now, the one particular characteristics of this transformation is that we are talking about a convergence of technologies. We are no more talking about or meaning any particular technology. The information technology or the electronics today has been merged together, and we call it cyber. This my colleague Trisha said very correctly there. Now, this digital transformation has a special meaning because it's almost in everything is virtual there, cross-border there. It has a few characteristics there. But how do we work together with the larger European to take advantage of the digital transformation there? It can bring the efficiency, productivity, knowledge, and the wealth to the people if we exploit them, if we use them properly. If we don't use them, if we don't, protect them, this technology, we may have a disaster in the name of cybersecurity. What we have seen and we have been reading almost every day. Not a single day is passed when you see the Financial Times or international publications. Couple of news on the cyber attacks or the cyber breaches, you find it. In fact, the whole geopolitics today is centered around the technology and the tech, and the data has become the real geopolitical war. It has given rise to several issues: privacy, security, internet governance, technology transformation there. We are seeing the impact there. The UNGG, we met in 2001 and is 2020 is past. We still haven't come across an agreement on the norms of behavior in the cyberspace. Is it not more complicated than what we have seen in nuclear? We have no sight that currently UNGG is going on to basically agree on norms of behavior. The rights of the people, self-determination, self-right, self-protection right. These are the issues, international law. These issues have become very, very important. India and Portugal are today very close friends. 2017 marked a clear-cut deviation between the relationship between the two countries. We signed a couple of MOUs, including almost in every area, including the information technology. Joint working group was set up. The meeting of the working group has taken place in area of information technology. It was decided that we work in the electronic manufacturing, particularly in the new emerging areas. But in the meantime, these issues which I mentioned, that have a reason there. India recognizes, for India, Portugal is the fourth most nation European country. The markets, there is a lot of asymmetry in the markets between the two countries. There's a lot of asymmetry in terms of the technology development in the two countries. Indian market, of IT Indian market, is somewhere around $190 billion. And the security market itself is somewhere around $12 to $14 billion. Is very far away, very high as compared to the Portugal. As per the data I have, their figures are somewhere $5 billion. But the new technology, new emergence of technology, gives us, it brings two countries and we can do a lot. And one of the great area, one of the potential area, the two is the artificial intelligence, because of the general nature and importance of artificial intelligence. Maybe for health, maybe for even the vaccination itself, the defense, in different areas, manufacturing, Industry 4.0 manufacturing. This is one area where the two countries have a great potential and they can work together. The second area is the capacity development, where both the countries, because we require these people to be skilled in the newer technology, new innovation, we need to exploit those technologies there. And third is the security. Today, Portugal assumed the presidency of the EU. They are the presidium of the EU. This is a golden time, particularly during the current Honorable Prime Minister of Portugal, who is from the Indian origin, to work together and strengthen our relation much better, much deeper, and move toward a constructive partnership where we can bring benefit to our society, benefit to our countrymen, at the same time work as a team on those issues which I mentioned. I thank once again my co-panelist from the Portugal for having and deliberating on this issue. Thank you, Trisha.
Thank you, Dr. Rai. Mr. Farinha, the floor is yours.
Hello, good morning from Lisbon. Good afternoon there in India, Mr. Rai, Ms. Rai, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, thank you for the Observer Research Foundation and the Portuguese Embassy in New Delhi for this invitation. It's a pleasure to join you in this conversation. I would like to start by sharing with you what are the latest developments in terms of digital transition agenda in Portugal, our priorities in the context of the Portuguese presidency of the Council of the European Union, and also state some potential collaboration lines that I hope can feed our afterwards conversation and our afterwards joint work. So the program of the 22nd Portuguese Constitutional Government identified digital transition as one of its 4 core priorities, together with green transition and addressing demography and inequalities related challenges. And if digital transition is crucial to involve in terms of economy and society, it was necessary when the current Portuguese government took office or renovated its mandate in October 2019 to create a new governmental area and appoint a new position, the Secretary of State for Digital Transition, currently in the hands of André D'Aragão Azevedo, for whom I have the pleasure to work for. And even though this new area was integrated into the Ministry of Economy, traditionally associated with businesses and economic affairs, it actually is a transversal area with an all-of-government approach and the broader responsibility of pushing and pulling the digital agenda in all vectors of our country's development. So having this in mind, in March 2020, we present the Digital Transition Action Plan, which is a new operational oriented document that took stock of all other sectorial strategies pre-existing and action plans, and actually tried to fill on the gaps to have this broader approach to digital transition. This reflects in a plan organized around 3 pillars and 3 main dimensions we believe are crucial to address the challenges and opportunities of digital transition in our society: people, businesses, and public administration. And around these 3 main pillars and their sub-pillars, we have also a transversal level of what we call digital catalyzers and a list of priority measures, currently 12. So around the first pillar on people, we focus very much on capacity building and digital inclusion, on the cycle of life approach from the digital education from an early age, to professional training and reskilling, higher education and specialization, and not forgetting digital inclusion and digital literacy. Portugal still has around 18 to 19% of citizens that don't use the internet. We are lagging behind on that dimension when comparing to our fellow member states of the European Union. On the second pillar, we focus much on the business's digital transformation, on addressing the challenges, of course, but also harvesting the opportunities of what technologies bring us from the SMEs point of view, but also on focusing on entrepreneurship, investment attraction, and also scientific and technological transfer from higher education and research institutions to the economy. And finally, on the public administration one, we keep up on trying to digitalize all our public administrations and on focusing on using technology also to open up our public administration from the central, regional, and local levels. On the catalyzation, which is a broader level that actually is common on all these 3 pillars, we focus very much on regulation, privacy, cybersecurity, and cyber defense. As my fellow panelists mentioned, these are crucial areas today. Also on circular data economy and the reuse of data, connectivity and infrastructure, looking at disruptive technology, as Mr. Ray also points out, there is a convergence today of technologies and we need to have an integrated look on how their potential can be used. And also, of course, alignment with the European digital strategy. And with this plan's approval, we also have a mission structure that is responsible to put up on this agenda. On the COVID-19 impact, we saw, of course, and we faced several challenges, but we also saw a significant digital acceleration in our country. We saw significant progression in terms of digital inclusion, of adoption on electronic payments, and increasing presence of SMEs online, and also a significant resilience showed up by startups that developed products and services in the digital area. Of course, and jumping into the European scene, we will have a significant mechanisms and investment capability in the upcoming 5 years with the recovery and resilience plan. And from the total of 14 billion euros that Portugal will have at its disposal, 38% should be invested in digital transition. And this is a significant increase from the minimum threshold of 20% that the Commission will require. And this, of course, will be distributed in a balanced way through the three dimensions I've mentioned before. So we'll have several projects that, for example, like the digital innovation hubs and the test beds that we can really push and move forward in a more accelerated way that we were planning before. And with this European instrument, it's also a good motto to jump into the 2021 Portuguese presidency of the Council of the European Union and highlight how among the 5 dimensions that constitute the current presidency priorities that include resilience, social, green, digital of course, and global Europe, digital is in fact acting as a cross-cutting element from all these 5 dimensions. And I would also highlight in the digital domain in itself what the specific priorities are. So we are very much focused on accelerating the digital transition as an engine of economic recovery, as been mentioned before, and as an engine of development of new, safe technologies in infrastructures and connectivity as the backbone of Europe's leadership in the digital ecosystem. We focus very much also on empowering citizens through the investment in education, training, and lifelong learning, and also in businesses' reinforcement of capabilities, enforcing a robust, just, and competitive economy, and ensuring a safe, neutral digital environment that empowers growth and development. And finally, a third digital dimension that focuses on digital democracy, reinforcing, of course, Europe as a beacon of digital democracy, reinforcing European digital sovereignty, and promoting e-government solutions for the 21st century. And in the context of the Portuguese presidency, we are very much pushing to make concrete advances on this later bullet that I will get into detail on these initial remarks. We have proposed to the European Commission and our fellow member states a draft of what we call a Lisbon Declaration, a declaration that states digital economy as an enabler for prosperity and competitiveness, not forgetting the fundamental importance of ethics, values, and also of cross-continental and cross-sector collaboration. A declaration that, first of all, will point to the importance of defending democratic values and freedoms and fundamental rights, reinforcing the urgency of protecting against online threats, and highlighting themes such like digital identity, digital literacy, and inclusion. This will promote a new paradigm also on international cooperation, because it will encourage dialogue, international connectivity, and global digital cooperation, supporting other countries, but also benefiting from their own experience in harvesting the benefits of digital transition. And most importantly, to also create a trustworthy international environment based on shared standards, ethical and values, safeguarded by common regulatory principles or broadly adopted codes of conduct whenever the legal frame is still inexistent or insufficient, and promoting the use of technology with a focus on well-being and prosperity. We also want to promote the development of intercontinental shared assets regarding, for example, communication infrastructures. We are inaugurating next June a new submarine link that will connect Europe with South America and Africa. We also want to develop common technical standards that ensure interoperability and facilitate economies scale of supporting business development and trade, and also implement dedicated monitoring structures for supervising this cooperation. As we can conclude, we want to put citizens in the center of this inclusive, resilient, and safe and reliable digital ecosystem, because digital has created a world with no frontiers, but also has torn many others apart. So it is fundamental that we jointly define common grounds recognized and followed by as many nations, institutions, and citizens as possible, a foundation that represents this new era of digital democracy with a purpose. Together with this declaration, Portugal also wants to propose a framework for a digital charter of rights that can be adopted by like-minded nations and integrated into national legislations, considering, of course, the own specificities of all countries. We plan to have this declaration signed by different stakeholders, companies, NGOs, academia, but most especially beyond the European borders, other countries that share these values and these principles. The declaration will be signed in the Digital Assembly, a two-day event occurring in Lisbon on the 1st on the 2nd of June, probably still in digital format. And this is something Portugal, as you may understand, is strongly committed. We do believe that without evolving also the business sector and other like-minded nations, this agenda will be limited. And considering that European Union and India are the two biggest democracies on the world, and as we, the Portuguese, always have this specific agenda in fostering EU collaboration with other geographies, and considering also the collaboration that has characterized our two countries in the last years, we seek very much to explore with India the opportunity to collaborate and to together move forward this agenda. So I think I'll stop for now for the initial remarks and be available for questions or other discussion topics. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Farinha, for providing that overview of what Portugal is doing in the space of digital transitions, as well as teaser into the agenda for the 2021 presidency. So while we wait for questions from the audience, I'll ask one question to just kick off the discussion. And this is something that we haven't really touched upon in the course of the discussion yet, but is nevertheless crucial in these discussions, which is that data flows are critical for innovation, for access, for competitiveness in the fourth industrial revolution, law enforcement, national security, and the data governance frameworks being adopted all over the world are taking different approaches to striking the balance between all of these imperatives for data flows. So how can cooperation between India and the EU, or Portugal in this case, best strike the balance between all of these competing demands? Dr. Rai, first to you, and then Mr. Farinha.
Thank you, Trisha. Yes, I agree with you. It's a very, very important kind of a topic, data governance, because as I said, the tech and data has become really a hot geopolitical subject there. European Union has had enacted earlier there was Article 29, which used to regulate the data governance and the data flow. Subsequently, the Article 29 was replaced by the GDPR, which was enacted in 25th March 2018. Now it's 2021 we have started. There are certain strong stipulation in the GDPR, and one of the most strongest stipulation is in terms of the cross-border data flow, or what you say, a data flow across the borders. It touches the data governance activities also. While there have been reports in the media about the issues which the industry, both European and Indian, are facing it. At the same time, India has also drafted its own Data Protection Act, which currently is pending the Parliament for passing converting into the Act, and hopefully very soon this year, I believe this year itself, first half of this year, we'll be seeing the Data Privacy Act or the Data Protection Act be enacted in India. As you said, Trisha, very, very clearly that today the data governance model in the world, there are different governing models in the world. We have a CBPR, which is largely implemented by the APAC countries. We have a GDPR, the US is in the process of drafting their own Privacy Act there. The other countries, China and Russia and other countries, have their own regulation which regulates the data governance. However, as of today, the regulations are discrete. Hardly there is any compatibility in terms of the regulations there. Now, for example, GDPR requires the adequacy kind of a accreditation, and only then you can have a data flow there. CBPR has also their own kind of a regulations there, a similar kind of a regulation. Indians have prepared our Data Protection Act, India Data Protection Act, is somewhat on the pattern of a GDPR. It also has the same feature. It allows the cross-border data flow. It also has an arrangement for the adequacy arrangement. It also has a data protection authority like a data commissioners, which EU has, and they elaborate for the adjudication of the breaches or the complaint. There is a complete elaborate framework for the adjudication has been formulated. The issue which Trisha, you raised it. Every country in the world is trying to create their own data governance. The data today cannot be localized. Anything which is on the network, which on the internet, cannot be localized. I cannot imagine any localization kind of a thing of the data. The models of the internet are much different than the models of the communication in any of the countries, conventional communication. It's a complete global world. With the technology, every country is not able to develop every technology. The technology itself, there are pockets in the world. Several countries are trying to create their own technology there and be at the top end. But the fact of the life is that we are in a truly global world. We are in an international supply chain system. There is nowhere, anywhere that we can set up a horizontal and vertical kind of a things there. The whole manufacturing concept has changed to contract manufacturing. That's why Foxconn and several other companies have come up. The whole semiconductor technology is now production manufacturing concentrated by and large in one country, one company there. So on one side, there's a technological consolidation. It is becoming a different trend. On the other side, we have a regulation which is bringing partition, and we have seen how the CBPR, GDPR, Indian and others are trying to do. There is a lack of consistency. There is a lack of interpolation. It all is leading to negotiation give and take. The larger question is that in a world where there's a homogeneity, there's a cross-border, everything is a cross-border virtual. We can't have the partition, we can't create a boundaries there. Should we not have a legislation which is interoperable, consistent, and in conformity with the local laws there? That's the need part of it. And that's why in my opening remark I said we are very happy that today Presidium is with the Portuguese. Immediately after the Data Protection Act is enacted by the Parliament, the first thing we will be now talking to the European Union for the accreditation arrangement. I must also say that I led the delegation for recognition of India in the Europe and vice versa as a part of accreditation. I went to Brussels a couple of times there, but somehow we could not proceed further because of they wanted to put the specific data protection act on the line of those days Article 29 and then the GDPR. India is not a member even European Convention of the Cybercrime Convention. We really want to enter into a discussion with the European Union, as my co-panelist, esteemed co-panelist has said it, that the countries too are important there. We need to work together. They are the two largest democracies of the world there. So we need to initiate dialogues on the larger issue of a privacy accreditation, because that is the first fundamental steps which we need to take it to have a seamless cross-border flow of information. Industry on both sides should take advantage of the strength of each of the region, each of the country. We must have a joint research and development. The data, these kind of a boundaries, data law should not become a constraint factor. So as Trisha, you said it, the data governance is the first step and is an important step in this digital transformation. And we have seen how the data played a kind of things in even the COVID-19 pandemic situation. The lack of data availability, lack of transfer of data, the entire world has to suffer there. I think this itself is an important kind of a steps which we need to learn together. I certainly would be happy to make a presentation to my counterpart at some time at the end of ranges how we are perceiving our data governance policies there. And how do we want to work with other countries? We really want to work with other countries to make the manufacturing, sharing of data, services a seamless kind of a thing for the larger benefit of the society. We need to recognize, we need to have a common standard of auditing also there. Because not only this, there should be the accreditation will have arrangement for the auditing arrangement. We need to evolve a common set of auditors which can work on both sides and keep editing it there, and where we can impanel together, work together, standard norm, and work together. The other area is when we talk about the data governance, then the next step comes to the next generation communication. So I think we need to look at the data governance because it's going to impact all our future technology, new emerging technologies, whether it's artificial intelligence or the next generation communication or cybersecurity. Data breaches happens from one country to another country and has no boundaries there. So this is an important step. The important happenings are happening worldwide. Developments are happening worldwide. This is the right time that we should sit down together, start discussing together, and work it out, both with respect to the bilateral as well as from the European Union point of view also. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Farinha. Your thoughts?
Yes, so as Dr. Ray mentioned, we are this is a global world, and digital by default is global and without frontiers. So of course we are, even though there's a significant importance in looking at data protection and assuring some level of sovereignty, we do believe that when we share principles and worries about that use of data, it's easier when we put up these regulations to make them communicate and define ways so that the data can flow. There are significant challenges today. For example, the COVID-19 crisis is an example of this, that we would gain very much in sharing more data in terms of research, in terms of public health responses, and so on. So we need. I do believe that we need to pick up on these shared challenges in order to make the case on specific examples on the sharing of data, on the use of data for the common good. We are in some way very much concerned on the misuse of data and forgetting all the good potential that data flows between the borders of our countries can in some way foster the development of public health responses, as I've mentioned, but also on business development and technology development. We are looking at this more on the national level, but also other countries in the European Union are looking for this. And we, in the upcoming 5 years in the implementation of the Resilience and Recovery Plan, we intend to put up some regulatory sandboxes, for example, to explore specific exemptions on the application, for example, of the GDPR, to in some way explore the use of data to develop or to foster new technologies. So maybe this is an area we can explore later on how to create this. Of course, we have to see a structural connection between to allow the data flows. But maybe we can also create some exemptions to, in some way, demonstrate that importance, demonstrate the usefulness of, for example, being able to share some data and develop a specific algorithm, for example. And so it will be interesting to explore that part also further on with India.
Tesha,
Yeah.
if you permit me, I'll just add one line, if you permit me.
Okay, sure, sir.
See, we have, as I said, we have already drafted, and it's a pending enactment, our Data Protection Act, like the GDPR. But the good part, either with the Portugal or with the European Union and India, is that both the countries, both the regions, have yet to involve or start work on a non-personal data. European Union has said something. We also have doing something there, but the framework has not been involved. Any approach in this has not been finalized there. Can we not work together to at least come together and evolve a consistent, interoperable kind of a technique, at least in the non-personal data, which is equally important like a personal data, because this is connected with the social development of our society in our countries, so that we end up in creating a uniformity between the two regions, between the two larger democracies.
Thank you, sir, for that comment. On that note, Mr. Farinha, in your comments regarding the Lisbon Declaration, you'd mentioned, if I had that correct, intercontinental shared assets. I'd be curious what you envision under those digital shared assets, because that seems like a very interesting concept.
Thank you for the question. So the best example of this is the new submarine cable we are inaugurating very soon, and this is a shared asset between different businesses in different continents. And so this is not a strictly European infrastructure, and it will not benefit strictly European businesses, but also will foster, for example, North African nations and North African based businesses, and also on South America and Brazil most precisely. So I think when we envision the complete control of these infrastructures by American or European businesses, we in some way we lose this sense of sharing the outcomes and the benefits of this infrastructure. So we will look very much to have a more of this shared ownership of the infrastructure itself, and on the potential uses of all the data that flows through it. So this is most precisely a good example on how we see this shared ownership of infrastructure. And we, as a small country, also suffer very much from this, because since we have not the same capability of investments as other nations, we are so very much more dependent on international businesses for the implementation. So we look very much for joint investment on this infrastructure. Is something that makes sense for us. It's just the only way sometimes to really put forward this kind of significant infrastructures. But we can also explore, our potential areas, for example, on the use of data infrastructures and data processing infrastructure. Infrastructure actually nowadays doesn't have to be a physical asset in some way. It can be also intangible. So What we mentioned there is that we look very much to explore the potential to share, for example, high processing computer performance. We have a big European project on that part, but I don't see any reason why we don't explore outside the European borders once again the potential to collaborate on these areas, for example, for scientific development.
Wonderful, thank you so much. Again, moving on to another question, since the audience seems very shy today. Both of you mentioned ideas of digital and cyber sovereignty. We've spoken about data in that context. Are there other areas of tech governance, given that India and Europe share this value, that the two could promote knowledge sharing and infrastructure partnerships? Dr. Rai, first to you.
I think I agree with my esteemed panelists with me there. The scopes are very, very high. And as I said in my opening remarks, the new technologies are opening up new opportunities. One of he mentioned about the submarine cable. Almost every submarine cable of the world is landing it in India. India's investment in the entire submarine cable structure today stands about 22+%. That's an investment structure. And we are expanding our investment. We are a consortium partner to CME V234 kind of a cables there. In fact, India is not a partner to, not investment partner to Google and Facebook, which are trying to lay down their own submarine cable. But we are also supporting them in some way. The companies are working very closely with them. That's one area it can be explored between if we can have a appropriate kind of a model, because the entire investment in the submarine cable is in the private sector hand. The government must facilitate and explore the possibility where we can come together. We are also laying a separate submarine cable between our islands, Andaman Nicobar, and bringing them to and it may go to the Singapore or Japan there. It's being done in collaboration with NEC. Tata's Communication Limited is a leading partner in the submarine cable infrastructure. We should be able to do that. With the second aspect, which I see in the infrastructure side, is that as I said, we'll be soon having the Data Protection Act. With this, it will open the route for a bilateral arrangement between the European Union and India. And India in the process of setting up large data centers, very, very large data centers, because of our own requirement. With the accreditation arrangement in place, Data Protection Act in place, I think we must explore the housing the data of each other country in their respective. We must take advantage of the expertise in each of the country and try to explore and sharing those infrastructure, particularly the cloud infrastructure. India, because of a large requirement, is setting up its own. As I said, our market is $190 billion as of today, and we are growing at the rate of almost 30% growth rate is there. Our internet users are, we will be touching 600 million users, and the next 1 billion users are from this part of the country. India is a leading country in terms of infrastructure when it comes to Southeast Asia. So I think the exploitation, setting up the joint infrastructure, particularly the cloud, is one of the concepts I think that we must look at it and go through, in addition to the some R&D research and development joined together, particularly undertaking the AI kind of application in health, as well as in education, in such strategic areas, I think we should do. There is a great potential of where and all in the various projects, and all this requires infrastructure. There is a high time that we should do in the 5G kind of area. India is a very large country. We have a huge demand for the next generation communication. That's another area, at least we can initiate some joint kind of a project for manufacturing, at least of the BTS there, where we should be able to strengthen relation and try to enter into each other market at a more convenient and a beneficial manner.
Thank you, Dr. Rai and Mr. Farinha. Any comments?
Yes, thank you. I agree with all the areas of potential collaboration, most especially 5G. I think it will be probably the most heavily invested area in the upcoming years, at least when it comes to the European Union, but I believe also on India and the United States. On the cloud investments, as we've seen in the last years, Europe in some way is closing a little bit on itself. We had some concerns on the housing of data outside the European Union. There are significant investments ongoing on creating European-based cloud solutions. We have some regulations that with the big technology companies in order to house sensitive data in European grounds. But I think there is definitely a potential to collaborate in shared cloud assets with countries that share our principles and our concerns. This is, of course, a geopolitical concern, but it's relevant where you don't share the same balance between democratic values, business development, and the presence of state. And I don't believe this is the case between between the European Union and India. So, as I mentioned in my early introduction, when you have these common grounds on principles, as I mentioned, everything is easier to explore on a more technical and detailed move. So the cloud, and the cloud goes far beyond the data itself. It can be on the processing area, it can be for the use of or developing scientific research based on those data. So there is a lot of cloud uses that can be explored, even with the concern of respecting these issues that I mentioned. And of course, once again, in all areas related to health, I think there is almost an obligation for cooperation. We are living a global pandemic. This is a common problem that we all live, and so it makes very little sense in some way not to collaborate on the development of solutions, on the deepening the knowledge we have around this virus. So it's of course a big challenge for us, but also a significant opportunity to walk the talk on what the collaboration really means, and on the useful of sharing information and solutions. What we have seen, the scientists have collaborated in a far more intense way than politicians have on this crisis, and this is something that we have learned, that we have to learn from this situation. We have the knowledge from the virus 2 months after it was found out in China was significant, and it was only possible because scientists shared data from the earliest moments and so on. Of course, we are living now a very different situation. in some way a battle for vaccination is ongoing. Some competition on the production and on the use, but we must not forget how we reached here. Before the manufacturing, there was a lot of investment on research and developing solutions that was only possible on collaboration. So of course this is an abstract concern in some way, but it really reflects what we should search from now on.
Trisha, I have a different kind of a suggestion for the EU and India to think. If you allow me, and if my panelist Farinha permits me, I can make a suggestion. I mean, it's altogether a different kind of a suggestion.
Sure, sir. 2 minutes, because we have a few questions from the audience as well.
Mr. Farinha, you see, today you are also keeping track that the world is facing a shortage of semiconductors there. The entire market, entire production is concentrated in one company, in one country there, and even the US is very much worried about it, that they have practically, Pentagon has forced that company to setting up their plant in Arizona. But that is not the best technology, but the next best technology than what they are setting up in their own country. Europe has one semiconductor company, which is the leading company. That's called Infineon, but it requires a lot of modernization, a lot of kind of innovations to set up. India is still struggling in this area. In the new emerging world, and semiconductor is going to be very, very important, particularly when you have electric car. And you are reading in the media that all auto manufacturers are finding a severe shortage of semiconductor. The setting of a plant costs about $15 billion today. That's a cost, and we require every year $2 to $3 billion. If starting a new facility by any country in the world is really a problem, and that has made the entire thing to be concentrated in one company, in one country there. The other company of that country is also little far away between that company in their own country. Can we sit down together and explore if the two countries can invest together and create one semiconductor? Maybe Infineon, look at the Infineon, try to how to modernize it, how to innovate it. At least we should be able to may not go 3 nanometer technology, which is now currently is being built up, and there in America it's a 5 nanometer technology. Can we produce it with a kind of a joint facility, production facility, to create a 22 nanometer kind of a technology or 40 nanometer technology? It will give us a lot of security to our future products, which are maybe a next generation communication or any other kind of thing, where both the countries can work together. This is I thought I must make the proposition to you. Can we work together? Can we start discussing together to all work together? Because both the India and European Union, there is a problem and serious gaps.
Thank you for the suggestion, Dr. Ray. I think it will be very important to follow up on that suggestion. We, in a small country as Portugal, that the shortage of semiconductors and the current competition for that resource is being very visible. We have a large car manufacturing company that actually had to stop, and it is our biggest exporter, had to stop for a couple of days because it ran out of those kind of components. We have a huge school digitalization program that will reach all of our students in schools. It's 1 million students and 200,000 teachers. It's small numbers comparing to India, but it's significant in our small country. And we are very much in delay on the acquisition of personal computers and all related necessary infrastructure and connectivity because of the shortage of supply of computers that is due to the shortage of components. So this is something that is touching our daily life in a small country as ours. It's a concern of the European Union. The European Union is pushing very much also on the resilience and recovery plan to gain some self-sufficiency in the production of semiconductors. But once again, this doesn't have to represent production only inside its borders. We can have a broader look with other geographies, with other potential partners that share the same challenges as we, and as a bloc also in some way solve this problem and compete positively with other giants in this world. So thank you for the suggestion. I look very forward to continue this specific conversation with you and also to make the necessary bridges with our partners in the Commission in order to explore this opportunity.
We can look at the Infineon to start with, and how do you strengthen Infineon? Both of us can look at it and move on instead of starting from zero.
Wonderful. This can be an agenda point then for the India-EU summit in a few months. We have time for one question. And like going from the level of nation states down to the individual, there's a question from Rishabh Tiwari who has asked, so the pandemic has exposed a lot of like vulnerable communities, especially to insecurity. And the issue here is, are we trying to shoehorn technology solutions or the technologies needed for digital transitions into communities that may not be ready or equipped to engage with these new technologies? And so the question is, how can India and the EU, these can be lessons for elsewhere in the world as well, how do you tackle digital transitions in a way that don't accentuate existing socio-economic inequalities in society? Mr. Farinha, over to you first.
So this is very much one of our concerns, since we are one of the most digitally excluded nations in terms of the European context. So one of the mottos of our digital transition action plan is to leave no one behind. So one of the most important projects we have on the first pillar that I mentioned before is the inclusion of 1 million Portuguese citizens, that it's still half of the 2 million that never used the internet. And when they are kept apart, the use of internet, they are kept apart very significant dimensions of what social inclusion is today: the access to information, the access to public services, the access to private services. The pandemic also showed that it's not a luxury to communicate, to make a video conference. It's actually something that has become crucial for people to keep in touch with their relatives and their families. It's crucial to also to mental health, crucial to keep up working, and so it's something that we are strongly investing and developing in our country, and we very much are available to share our experience from most details from the accountants. How do we implement? Because it's not something it's just setting up rooms with computers and bringing up people. It's something that needs to be well thought and implemented. There are specific approaches that are being more successful, and we can share with you what is our experience on that area, and of course also learn from what initiatives are being set up in India, which are definitely bigger and more diverse than ours, and that is something that can also enrich our dialogue on that topic. So of course I must state that we have some experience and success in the past on the topic, for example, of e-gov and the relationship between citizens and the public services. And we can also share with you our experience on that, and also learn from you, from what is India's experience. I have read some articles, for example, something that is very relevant for digital inclusion, a phenomenon that's the most recent internet users in India and also in other countries are skipping the computer usage. They are just using the mobiles and the tablets, and this is something that is sometimes forget when we design digital inclusion, and what we understand is the potential, the daily use cases of usage of the internet by citizens that were formerly digitally excluded. And that is something, for example, that I would look very much to understand what measures India is putting up in place to include citizens from the mobile usage perspective. So.
Thank you, Mr. Farinha. Dr. Rai, the last word is yours.
Thank you very much, Trisha. I must thank the Observer Research Foundation for arranging this meeting. The two, as I honor the statement of my esteemed panelists, the two are the largest democracies of the world. There is a history of relationship, not for years together, but a century. Relationships are growing. A lot of similarity between the two countries there, and between the two regions there. Both we find a deprived digital divide in some aspect there, and we need to catch up in terms of technology development so that we can meet our need, or we can play equal role in the technology of politics. The new emergence technologies and the digital transformation which we have entered now offers an opportunity to both of us, to India, Portugal, India and European Union, to work together and bring benefit and wealth, creation of wealth to both the regions and the countrymen of both the countries. I greatly appreciate the deliberations and the comments made by esteemed panelists, and I hope that we should be able to chart out a clear agenda in the next Indo-EU summit and move together at a much faster speed than what has been in the past. I thank very much to once again to my esteemed panelists, participants, and not the least Observer Research Foundation and my younger colleague and friend Trisha Ray. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Rai and Mr. Farinha, for joining us for this session. With that, we come to the end of this session, but please do feel free to continue this conversation online, on Twitter, on our social media, and we hope to see you for the next webinar in this series as well. Thank you all so much for joining.